Luke Skywalker meditating on his rocky island retreat, dragons soaring over the Westeros coast, John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara falling in love against a background of technicolor green fields. One place that links these unforgettable images? The island of Ireland. Maybe it's the drama of the landscapes or the heart and soul of the music that attracts location scouts. When soaring sea cliffs lashed by wind and rain were required for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, there was no more fitting location than the cliffs of Moher, a highlight of the wild Atlantic Way. Meanwhile, anyone who's seen those jagged fingers of rock erupting from the ocean will understand why Lucasfilm decided Skellig Michael was the perfect place for a Jedi Knight to take refuge. So if you're a film fan, the island of Ireland is ready when you are. It's time to book now. Visit Ireland.com and press the green button to start your Irish adventure.
Hello and welcome to a special festival edition of the Irish Film London podcast. My name is Gerry Maguire and I'm here to fill you in on everything we've been up to over the last few weeks. So today's Thursday the 18th of November and the festival opened last night on Wednesday the 17th and it runs until Sunday. So our intention is to try and provide you with these sort of daily festival dispatches, but well, we'll see how we go. It's not like we're not busy enough already. And what's more, there's no it's just Gerry on my own here. I've no Nave with me. She's away acting because she's an actress, of course, and she happened to land a big acting job during the festival, and far be it from me to deny her that pleasure. But I'm not sure how I feel about that. Is the IFL podcast even a thing without Niamh Brannigan's voice on it? Let's find out. So I've no Niamh, but what we have done for these podcasts is we've deputised another Irish actress who I think is going to be really exciting to hear from. Her name's Caoimhe O'Malley. She's a brilliant actress. I don't know if you'll recognise her voice, but you'd recognise her face. You can look her up. And Caoimhe's going to record a few festival interviews for us. I'm going to try my best to do a bit of ad hoc festival reporting and fill you all in. But we're kind of doing this on the hoof. So your normal top-notch audio production is not really possible in these circumstances. So please forgive any hissy, any subpar audio quality from these things. And the other thing is, I'll sort of expand on this a little bit, but we thought that we would do a few mini episodes during the festival. We might still end up doing some mini episodes of the podcast just to keep people up to speed. But last night was the opening night of the festival, and our opening night film was the brilliant Arracht by Tom Sullivan. And in preparation for that, Caoimhe got a hold of Dónall Ó Héalai, the lead actor from the film, and did a little interview with him. And then last night on stage at the Riverside Studios to a sold-out audience, I'm still in awe of this, by the way, I did a Q&A with Tom Sullivan. And I've just recorded it on my phone, so yeah, you'll hear what you can hear, I suppose. You'll hear my chair creaking as I nervously shift around in it, and you'll hear all sorts of things from me and Tom's microphones and everything else, but let's see how we go. But suffice to say, between the interview with Dónall and my Q&A with Tom, which I think went on for over half an hour actually, we've actually got a fairly decent podcast episode to bring you. It's probably more than an hour's worth of content, so if you can't make the festival, or if you made it last night and you want to relive it, because of course you would, then we've got tons of audio content for you. And I'm recording this here in my flat on Thursday morning in the hope that I can get it out before I have to zoom off to Hammersmith again and start to do some of our industry events. So here we go. Without further ado, I leave you with Caoimhe O'Malley's interview with Dónall Ó Héalai, which was recorded earlier this week. And then I'll drop you straight into my Q&A with Tom Sullivan, recorded at the Riverside Studios last night. Irish Film Festival London is on right now. Please, if you are listening to this in a timely fashion, consider coming down. We'd love to see you. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know what you think of our festival events. Please do consider supporting Irish Film London as an organisation. We're a not-for-profit community organisation which really needs the support of listeners and members and anyone who feels like what we do is important enough to give us a shout out or to become a festival member. You can become a festival friend, or if you're feeling flush, you can become a festival champion. But even if you can't do any of that, just let people know that we're here. If you're enjoying the podcast, give it a like, subscribe, do all the normal, usual social media things. We really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference to what we do as a small organisation. And with any luck, you'll hear from me again later this week. So here's Dónall Ó Héalai, followed by Tom Sullivan, in regards to the film Arracht, which opened the Irish Film Festival London 2021 at Riverside Studios last night. Enjoy!
So, Dónall, thank you so much for joining me, and huge congratulations on Arracht. It is such an incredibly beautiful film and so heartbreaking, and you give such a moving performance in the lead role as Coleman Sharkey. So Arracht has gotten so much praise and attention since it premiered back in 2019. And I guess a lot's happened for you and for the world in the space of 2 years. So does it feel like a lifetime ago when you made the film?
Yeah, well, first off, Caoimhe, thanks a million for your kind words, and it's great to be chatting with you. And I guess it does feel like a life. Well, I don't know about a lifetime ago, but a long time ago. I think we wrapped on something like the 20th of October 2018. So it's been almost 3 years to the date. So a long time coming, but all of us, Tom, Kate, the whole team, are thrilled that it's finally kind of making its way out to audiences, and I guess that it's been received positively. I suppose it's been lovely to see that.
Yeah, and I know that so many people are looking forward to seeing it, and I was so lucky to see it last week. And so I thought we might just go back to the beginning a little bit, because
Sure.
I'm always really curious whenever I'm talking to filmmakers or actors or artists, like where the project began for them. So maybe you can tell us, if you can remember, because it is a while ago.
Sure, yeah.
Like, where did Arracht first present itself to you? Was it like a conversation with Tom? Was it a script?
Yeah, I can indeed. I was in Buffalo, New York, upstate New York, and I had actually kind of taken some time off acting in the industry and everything. I was up there. I was online, and a script came in from Tom saying that he had written this and he was applying for funding, and if he would mind if I'd be be a part of it, I guess. And I before even reading it, because it was Tom, I said absolutely. But I read the script, and I remember reading the script and having a very kind of visceral feeling of, I suppose, connection, and realizing that I was reading a story that had I been born kind of 170 odd years ago, that this could well be, my own story, or a story like it. And so, because it was so close to home and because it resonated so much, I was kind of hooked, and I was really chuffed that Tom had sent it to me and kind of asked me to be a part of it, because I'd worked with Tom on a short maybe 4 or 5 years prior to that, and with Kate McCullough, or the cinematographer, the amazing cinematographer. And that was a really positive experience, that short. And Tom is the kind of filmmaker who, I suppose, as an actor, he's kind of a really an actor's director because of his own acting experience. His insight is fantastic, So I think all of his stories have they're very kind of honest, and they're very human stories, and they always have heart. I always feel like anything Tom's made, it'll move you, you know. And so he was, you know, I was just really chuffed, and really kind of honored, truthfully, that he had entrusted me to tell Coleman's story.
Yeah, because it's amazing that you were talking about Kate's work there, and Kate McCullough, the cinematographer, because it's so beautifully shot, and it is quite of a strange feeling to kind of be looking at such a harrowing story so beautifully made. Like the landscape is just stunning, and obviously you're a Connemara man yourself, and you shot around that area. So you were kind of coming back from America to shoot this film in your homeland, and like you said, like characters that would have been there only a couple of generations before. So
Yeah.
did that kind of did the fact that you were surrounded by this amazing landscape, that you were kind of very much shooting in nature, and then also in a place that you've grown up in, did that all kind of help to get you
Oh,
into that?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just on Kate's kind of aesthetic, I guess, I think we, you know, because I was brought in early, like it was a really rare opportunity as an actor, because usually, you know, as you know, Clive, you're not really involved in many conversations prior to, you know, the first day on set. It can often be the case, you know, but I had kind of, I was in, you know, I was kind of eavesdropping to chats Kate and Tom had about the look, the feel. And I think one of the big things was trying to capture the beauty, but not in a pretty way, you know. And I think that is evident in the film, and I think that really informs the film. And the landscape is a massive character in the film. The granite, the gully, the cave. It really kind of does so much of the work, and did so much of the work for us, you know. So to shoot in that environment, and for that, you know, to shoot so close to home, as Gaeilge, you know, speaking Irish was really, yeah, it was a powerful experience, you know. Yeah, it'll stay. Yeah, really, really was.
I'm sure, and it shows, and it is interesting that, you know, the landscape and you and kind of your figure, your physique is like there are these juxtaposition kind of, you know, two things going on. And so I guess we should talk about your prep for the role, because, you know, as actors, you know, as any kind of artist, there's always a certain level of preparation for any film, any project. But obviously playing somebody who is living in a famine is going to be another level of prep altogether. I mean, were you daunted by the idea that that was going to be a part of saying yes to this role? And can you maybe talk a little bit about what you had to go through?
Yeah, I guess it was a little daunting, because I guess as an Irish person, you know, making or being a part of a film about the famine, you're just very conscious of not kind of fucking it up, you know what I mean, and doing it justice. And I guess there's a level of responsibility that comes with that type of storytelling. And we were all very aware of that. And I certainly was aware of that, while I was kind of approaching the role and prepping for it. And, you know, ultimately, because we had, I think the budget was about 1.2 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but on a film like that's not a whole lot. And for the scale of the kind of the story we were telling, and what that meant was we didn't have money for like lots of starving people or starving villages, or, you know, most of the famine was really seen through Coleman's body. And so once we got on board, like, it was just very practical, I guess. And also, you know, the pride can be a great friend sometimes as well, you know, that you just want to give it your best. And so fear and pride, I'd say, Cleva, were a big part of it. And then just, you know, working with the very good nutritionist, and you know, making some dietary changes.
And did you kind of have to, was there a long lead time in that? Because, you know,
4 months,
don't
yeah.
feel, yeah,
4 months,
4 months.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
a long
So
time.
it was like it was long enough, yeah, long enough, and yeah, just enough time as well, kind of. So
And then you're shooting in Ireland in the winter outside on a boat for most of that. So that's kind of Say the heat was a challenge.
Heat, yeah, there was heat, and then in the ocean, and kind of coming in and out of the sea, and there was some, you know, some days were tougher than others. But I have to give credit to Sasha Nichin, the girl, the actor who plays the little girl in the film, because she really we shot kind of most of the famine stuff first, if that makes sense, and then we shot the beginning of the film at the end of the shoot. And at the beginning of the shoot, when I was kind of at my lightest weight wise, I was really kind of struggling physically, you know, to stay awake and to, you know, to make any sense of things. And she was so incredible, like such a diligent professional, and she's outstanding in the film. She really is, as are all of the cast, you know. So like,
she really is, yeah.
Yeah, like it was just, yeah, it was really, really a gift to work with someone of her talent, you know.
That's amazing. And she, you know, you guys do have such a great connection and bond in the film. And like you said, it must have been difficult when your mind was kind of elsewhere with what you had to do physically to kind of keep the role. But, you know, did you have much time to kind of, you know, get to know, you know, her, or was it just like thrown in the deep end and you guys
thrown in fairly deep? Yeah, I did read when we were doing kind of callback auditions for her character. I did sit in on one of those, so I had read with her, and I did know her a little bit beforehand, but then there was quite a break between that time and shooting, so she was, you know, we were kind of thrown in there. But like, yeah, we definitely, you know, we certainly built a relationship, like a strong relationship during the shoot, you know. So
I mean, there are so many, like every character, every actor in this is so perfectly cast, and there is such a great ensemble within.
Yeah,
because I mean, I guess you're talking about a community that all know each other very well.
Yeah, and all, like, you know, from Dara Devani, who's incredible as Patsy, to Michael McElhatton as the landlord, to, you know, Siobhan O'Kelly as Coleman's neighbor, you know. Like there's so many that really bring the character or the world alive, you know. And yeah, I mean, I think everyone did such an amazing job at kind of filling their own story and filling their character story and filling their character's world, you know. So yeah, again, I think, you know, as an actor, you're just, when you get a chance to work with actors of that caliber, not just those I've named, but everyone involved, you know, you just feel like it's a good day going into work, you know. It's just like, you know, you get to work with these people. So
100%. And like you said, I absolutely felt that when I watched it, the sense that, you know, some characters might only have a couple of minutes on screen, but they feel like they've been there for actually a lot longer. And I guess that's the atmosphere that Tom and you all built as an ensemble going into those scenes. A scene that I particularly want to kind of ask you about. Well, it's more of a scene that I noticed myself as an audience member, feeling, you know, the sense of dread and foreboding that comes with watching any film like Arracht comes from the audience knowing the history, of course, and we know the outcome of what happened to a lot of these people. Specifically, I remember the scene with Michael McElhatton with the lieutenant, you know, and your character is feeling so much pressure from all angles, and you're just, you know, trying to explain what the ramifications of these kind of rent rises would be, and he's so flippant and just not listening, and you know, you feel that as an audience member, you feel like screaming because we of course know the history, and I'm just curious, you know, when you approach something like this, was there ever a difficulty for you separating, you know, Dónall, the person who knows, the modern man who knows the history, and playing, you know, Coleman's story for the scenes where it was, you know, especially at the start of the film where they don't fully know what is happening and they don't know how bad it's going to get.
Yeah, very much so, Caoimhe. Yeah. As in, like, at the start when I was prepping, I was reading so much, everything I could about the famine, books, watching any documentaries available, and trying to kind of consume as much as I could about that period and event as possible. And then I was doing a bit of work with a coach. I work with an acting coach, and I was kind of reminded that, like, Coleman doesn't know. It sounds so simple and so basic, but sometimes you forget that, like, your character doesn't know the outcome, and because it's so ingrained in terms of our history, and if you grow up in Ireland, you are you're aware of the famine, to varying degrees, and definitely there was a moment of, hold on a second, I need to kind of park all that for now and just try and live with what's going on here and experience that without knowing or thinking about where this goes.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm so fascinated with people's process with stuff like that, because playing anything, a period drama, anything that is set in true historical times, it comes with another level of kind of prep, but then at the same time you have to play the characters for just knowing as much as they know in the moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's gone on such a journey, this film. I mean, it premiered in the Tallinn Black Nights Film Festival in Estonia in 2019. And then it was it was Ireland's nomination for the Best International Feature Film in the Oscars in 2020. 11 IFTA nominations, one of which was your own for Best Actor nominations. And then it was released in the cinema in 2021. So I feel like this is the epitome of like pandemic film, because it was like made in pre-pandemic, released in the pandemic, and then you kind of have this now, this whole new lease of life post-pandemic. Well, hopefully, can we call this period post-pandemic? Even though it's not, but we're coming out of it in terms of the cinemas being open. And I guess I'm just curious, like, how has it been to eventually be able to go to the cinema and watch this on a big screen, like enjoy it with your family, get people who know you to go to the cinema, and how have you been enjoying watching it again?
Yeah, it's been like, it's like, honestly, it's been such it's kind of, how can I put this? It came out, so I'm working on something now, and I'm shooting in the west of Ireland again, but I had a few days off it had a screening in Galway and in Dublin, and I was able to sit in Dublin. Tom and I actually decided to sit in and watch it with the audience at the IFI, and watching it 3 years later, it was really special. And just because I guess the film has had such a journey, much undulation with pandemic, and it, playing at Dublin, and then the cinemas closing and the cinemas opening, but to have an audience be able to watch it now, and at London for it to have its screening there, you can't but help kind of feel like kind of a sense of some kind of achievement and happiness that it's just out there, because films like Arracht, I think, belong in cinemas, and that's where I think that's where you'll get most from watching it. I think it's a big screen film because of the cinematography and because of its the feel of the film. We're just really thrilled, like really, really thrilled that it's finally made its way out, and that we are, as a society, I guess, in a place where we can go to the cinema again.
It's brilliant. It's so important. Well, it's such a beautiful film, and you give such a considered and such a heartbreaking performance. So I know everyone's going to be really excited to see it in the festival. So thank you so much, Dónall, for chatting to me.
Thank you so much, Caoimhe. Thank you so much.
Still collecting myself holding up.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, it's very strange. Just to have it here, there was something about it. It was really weird. I've obviously seen it lots of times, but it was very special. Just this viewing, and I'm aware that it's kind of near the end of its run in terms of cinemas, and so it was a real honour to have it here. And we have an 11-month-old baby, and in a really weird way, so this movie was made 3 years ago, he is the spit of that kid. And I kill him 20 minutes into the film, so I mean, it was quite upsetting for me to see him. So yeah, for many reasons it was emotional.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about your journey towards making Arracht and your journey as a filmmaker before we talk about the film itself. So I suppose let's start at the beginning in terms of this is your debut feature film. I want to talk about your route of getting into film because you come from an acting background originally, right?
Yeah. So I was an actor. I'm an actor since I was about 25. I started. I did a geology degree, and my parents were delighted when I came home and told them I wanted to be an actor. After all, they were thrilled. And that I had a really a good time as an actor, and I really enjoyed it. And I think I was talking to you about this, Gerry, earlier, that I just found I began to engage a lot more with scripts later on in my acting career, and I found myself just kind of being way more as I got older, I found myself obsessing much more with script, and at the time it came out a lot as frustration, and I think that wasn't great for maybe as an actor, if you're sometimes as an actor you have to turn up and make the best of what you've got, because the production doesn't allow for changes. But I seem to pull against it a lot, and I think that caused me a lot of, I think, anguish as an actor, and also my co-workers as well. And so I think towards the end of my career as an actor, I wasn't exactly fun to be around. And then I started to write, and I realised that was the problem, that I was actually a writer, not an actor, and that the writer, I was just trying to express myself as a writer. And
so do you think that frustration as an actor was like your critical mind or your creative?
Yeah, and it wasn't even like that the work was that bad or anything that I was criticising. I think I just had a need to express myself in that way, and it's only like in retrospect that it makes sense to me now, So I apologise to all the productions that I bitched and moaned about the lines of dialogue that I had to say and stuff. It wasn't their fault; it was my fault, really.
And where did you go from there? What was your journey from there towards your debut?
I did a radio play back in 2010. About three lads on a curragh who go back in time, and it's very strange. It was very strange at a radio play. It was Osquaig as well. That was a bit of an eye opener for me. Working with actors and directing them, it was a real epiphany for me, and I realized that was where I should be. Helping actors as opposed to being one.
Yeah. And then what? Your first film beyond that?
I did a little short called Arracht, called Ossel, similar, about a kid who saves a donkey, and it's set very, very, very close to there, and it's contemporary. It's about a little kid who saves a donkey that's being abused, and takes him off to a little island, and it's a cute little story.
Lovely. So moving on to Arracht then. When we spoke earlier, you said that the process of getting it from script to screen, pandemic aside and everything, was a relatively quick one.
Yeah, it was. I'd made a lot of shorts, and I had a real. I wanted to make something big. Obviously, I wanted to make a feature because that was the next step, and this scheme came up. It was launched Cindy Cahir by Alan Esselmont and T.G. Cahir. And I just saw it as a fantastic opportunity, so I approached Q&amp, who's been on this journey with me. He's here tonight, and I remember, well, I went into his office and I was like, you know, we should go for this. And he was like, yeah, what have you got? So I pitched these ideas to him, and two of them were really well established. And the third one was not well established at all. And it was basically, I just said, okay, you know, he was like, oh yeah, that's what. And then I said, well, okay, so I have this one. There's a guy and he's on a boat and he's been banished from his land, and he's fishing and he's looking in on the land. And for some reason he's not allowed to go home, and he's living on this island, this feral existence. And I said, I don't know when it is, and I don't know where it is, and I don't know what it is or what it's about. And I said, so there you go. And he said, yeah, that's what we should do. And so that was the beginning of Arracht, and that's all I had, you know. And so as I've said, like, we never set out to make a film about the famine. The famine just came into the film and walked into it because of where it was set. I think, I mean, I have an affinity to Connemara. My partner of 20 years is from there. And I went to an Irish language school as a kid that was set up by teachers from Connemara. They used to bring us out there when I was a child. So I've used it a lot as a muse. And I think the famine is everywhere on the coastline of the west of Ireland, and particularly that area. I mean, the abandoned ridges in the fields and just the cragginess of the landscape just evokes it. And I think the ghosts just started to walk into it. And so, yeah, if I'd have set out to make a film about the famine, I honestly don't think I would have had the balls to carry it through, because it's such hallowed ground.
Yeah, it's heavy subject matter. But I think the way that you've approached it in Arracht, it's not a famine story necessarily. It's not a story that is centered around the famine. It feels like a story that just happens to be during the famine. It's about many more things on top of that. You're not really dealing with the enormity of it head on in that sense.
No, I mean, I suppose what we tried to do as well is, it was budgetarily. I mean, we were all aware that we weren't going to have poor houses or famine ships or crowds of people starving. And you know, the movie Black 47 had come out just around the time I was writing, and they had a much bigger budget than us, and I think, you know, they even struggled with it. I mean, I've spoken to Lance about it, the director of Black 47, and we all owe a huge debt to him as well, because Arracht became a film. It is through kind of that he set out and did something completely different, and it sent me on a different trajectory, because I knew I had to tell a personal story, that I couldn't show what needed to be shown. I mean, I would have needed millions and millions of euro to do justice. So I knew it had to be through Coleman, and it had to be through one man, and that was the challenge that I laid on in front of poor old Dónall Ó Héalai, who you see, who did such an incredible job, because I said to him, you know, listen, Dónall, we don't have the money to show the family, we're going to have to show it through you, and are you up for that? And he thought about it for a couple of weeks. He kind of made me a bit nervous, because I thought he'd jump at it. But he was like, hang on a minute, I'm not sure I'm going to have to think about this. And he, in fairness to him, he took it so seriously, you know, he knew the challenge that was ahead of him. And you can see the results, and you know, it's down to him really that the film is as impactful as it is. I mean, it's a massive credit to him as a performer and a person. Yeah.
Is he someone that you've worked with before?
We did. We shot a short together. He played the lead in a short that I made. It was about a kid who had killed his girl. He was a boy racer, and he'd been imprisoned, and the short begins, he gets out of prison, and he's dealing with the fallout. So another cheery story. Me and Dónall like to make comedies now. The next one's a comedy. And Kate McCullough actually was one of her first dramas that she shot, was the short. So me, Dónall, and Kate, we had all worked together before.
It's important, that, isn't it? Like to have a.
And Mary Crumlish, who edited this film, edited that short as well. So.
So there's pedigree there then.
Yeah. So it's kind of, we got the gang back together, you know.
Yeah. Good stuff. Very shortly, I'll open up questions to the floor. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. There will be a roaming mic which will come around. In advance, I just want to say, because there's lots of people here, if we do select you to ask a question, please wait until the mic reaches you, otherwise no one will be able to hear you. I've thrown myself off now, I forgot where I was. Does anyone have a question from the audience? Right, there is one straight down here, please, Tim.
I can just shout.
Please.
Yeah, shout.
No, don't do it.
Oh, don't shout.
What I wanted to know, I mean, he really...
No, still don't shout, please. Thank you.
Right, okay. He was really, really thin. Was it like a kind of like, did he lose a lot of weight for it? Is he naturally that way?
No, he's not, no. He's actually really fat. No, he was a big guy, you know. Dónall, I was slagging him off when I handed him the script, you know, and we were laughing because he was saying, you know, he was sending me photos of himself as the thing was happening. He was living in New York, and the comparison photographs are quite stark. So he lost about, I think he was 15 and a half stone. He got down to 10 and a half in 4 months. I think he got under 10 actually. And yeah, everybody asked that. He went vegan first. He went vegan for the first month. He said that dropped a lot. He did it in New York as well, which is tough because New York is, you know, food is good in New York. Yep. And he came home then. But he had a nutritionist. We had him. He was looked after, particularly towards the end, because he went on a water diet for the last week. He really went there. And he got to a point as well that, like, I don't know if anybody has heard about this before, but when you go on this kind of extreme thing, it becomes addictive in a way almost. Yeah. And he started to kind of like, he would say to me, you know, I can go more, like I can really go down to nothing. And I was like, he has to be able to row the boat, Dónall, like, you know what I mean? He needs to be able to do stuff as well. Like, he can't, you know, if he's too skinny, like, nobody's going to believe you're able to row through the sea. And so that stopped him in his tracks a little bit. I said, no, you know, you're good now. This is good, so we can go with this. But it is quite incredible. And when I see, it was scary because I lived with him when we were shooting, and he'd come out of the shower, and honestly, the guilt I felt, and I got a fright, like, you know, you get an awful fright because you feel, Jesus, this guy has really put himself out there for us. And the first week of the shoot was, we called all the famine stuff because he was at his skinniest. Yeah. And like all that water stuff. I mean, it was October. We shot at this time. It was 3 years ago. It's the time of year, and he had been spending time in the water, acclimatizing, because we had no budget for a tank or any of those. So all that underwater stuff is in the sea, like it's there in that gully. We got an underwater cameraman to get into the water with him that day, and we shot all that stuff. And we had a paramedic on set, and his body temperature was a big issue because he had no insulation anymore. Yeah. So we had to really watch him, and it's a miracle we got what we got, really, you know. The gods were with us.
So relieved to hear you had budget for a paramedic.
Yeah, we did. Well, I just put a white coat on it.
I do want to explore the aspect of shooting in that landscape a bit more, because that's like, it's such an incredible part of what we see in the film, and it's such a inhospitable place in general. Like, it must have been much more difficult to get what you got in that space as a result.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was protected from all that a lot, I think, you know, with credit to the team and the producer, and I don't remember it being difficult at all, you know, and I know it was, like, I know everybody was pulling their hair out and freaking out, but I wasn't, because I suppose I was just so buzzed about being there and being able to do this, and that's it's the right way, you know. Yeah. So I didn't find it difficult. I was just so obsessed at the time with it. It was incredible. It was an incredible time of my life. But it was tough. Like, there was 4 storms with names blew through the coast for those 20. We had 20 days, 4 weeks. So it was really hard, but we seemed to be lucky, you know, we seemed to catch a break. The days that we shot on the sea were calm. We were able to get indoors. The cave, and destroy all your. The cave was actually was on a basketball court in an industrial estate in the middle of Carrow. Yeah, so that cave isn't real. I mean, obviously where it is real, but the interior of the cave was weather cover because most of the film is outside. So we needed, when you're shooting a film, you need what's called weather cover. Your interiors are usually weather cover. When the weather's really bad, you go in, and then when it's nice, you go out. So thankfully we had the cave. So when those big storms blew through, we were able to go into the cave. You know.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So we were lucky. We were lucky, and we were lucky with Sasha.
Yes.
I want to mention Sasha. I mean, if we didn't have Sasha Quinn, who played Kitty, we wouldn't have shot this. We wouldn't have got what we got because Sasha was able to just miraculously, you know. I mean, I had to find someone who could speak Irish, and not just a kid who could speak Irish, but somebody who could speak the type of Irish that the rest of them are talking, which is Caintor O'Huchas, which is Gaeilge O'Baile, which is Irish taught at home, and Sasha. So I didn't have a huge choice. She had to be from Connemara. So we went and looked at all the schools just before the summer, and we found her. And coincidentally, it turns out that Sasha is Bob Quinn's granddaughter, the filmmaker, and that was a complete fluke. Bob Quinn, look him up. If you don't know who he is, incredible filmmaker, and a rebel and a real character. But it's his granddaughter Sasha who plays Kitty. But Sasha was able to turn up on set. I remember the first day on set, because with kids, I've worked with kids lots, and it's very prohibitive time wise. You only have a very little amount of time with them on set because they can only work for 40 minutes and they have a break for an hour, and you have to use doubles, and there's all this kind of. But Sasha would arrive on set, and I'd say, okay, we're doing this scene now, and this is like, we're not going to get this in 40 minutes, like. But Sasha would turn up and nail it in 3 takes, you know. And this was her first time, and if it wasn't, that was just another one of the elements that just fell into place for us. Because we were so lucky with Sasha, because the stuff that should have taken way longer didn't, because Sasha just was on it. And fantastic with Dónall, because Dónall in the first week was he was wasted, like he was in this kind of place because he was starving, and she really looked after him, you know.
Yeah, there's real chemistry between them. Like, there's not many shots where the two of them are in close contact with each other, but there's such communication between them. Their scenes. So interesting.
Yeah, it was amazing, and originally that I had imagined that the character of her to be helpless and weak, and that it was somebody that would demanded that he would look after her, and that was his road back to life in a way. Yeah. But when we cast Sasha, we realized very quickly that Sasha was never going to be a meek, weak child, that she was a feisty, tough kid. So I had to change my idea of how she changed the way I saw the character. And instead of him being brought back to life or being dragged back into humanity through her helplessness, she kicks and punches him back to humanity, which I think is much stronger, and that's a credit to her.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? One right back there, Tim, please.
Dus scanal den céad sco a bhíon agus Gerry mágad. What I was going to ask you is, I was puzzled why you were saying that you thought you needed a big budget to deal with the famine, because that's the first film that I've watched, certainly, where seeing the struggle in the native tongue, which is what would have been spoken, and then the bilingualism in the scenes where they go to the landlord, was something that brought home to me the personal trauma of the famine more than any other film that I've seen. What do you think? It needs to be a big budget, then sure, that's the way to do it.
No, I didn't. I think that film that you watched tonight didn't need a big budget, but if I was to if I was to do it if I was to try and show the famine on a more in a kind of a wider picture, you would need more money because if you were trying to depict crowds or so. From the very beginning, I knew that the budget was small, but the small budget actually it actually helped to create what because it forced me as a writer to internalize everything. So I mean, I think it's like I teach film in Dublin, and it's one thing that I've learned from being a filmmaker is that the obstacles are always, not sometimes, but always what end up being what you like the most about your film. The sequence in the middle of the film, for instance, when he's on his own in the gully, that's my favourite part of the film. And that was born out of pure necessity because there was stuff we couldn't capture. There was stuff about his family that we weren't able to get because at the time we just didn't have the hours and we didn't have whatever, and I was rewriting as we shot. So in the edit we all crunched our heads together, the producer, the editor, me, the music, and we said, right, we have to create his past. We have to create what's happened in the last 2 years with just what we have. So like they say, you write a film 3 times, once on page, once on set, and then once in the edit. So that sequence was conceived in the edit, and it's my favourite part of the film because it's what I didn't have, and we managed to, through hard work and keeping going and not letting go and pushing and pushing and pushing. I'm most proud of that stuff, and so yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think the film works because of its flinty, unfinished. And it's taught me how to make films in the future. I think completion can be a bad thing. I think the teetering on collapses is what great films. I think that's where real art is, because I think as an audience as well we enjoy that more because it allows us to lean forward and to search as opposed to sitting back and having everything just handed to us. So I think it's a great film because of that, and I think. That's because we had so many challenges.
Yeah, I think the stuff in the gully on the island is the most cinematic part of the film in that sense, because it's like a less is more aesthetic. You're telling a story with what you don't see.
But the sound is huge in it. Like the sound is a massive part of the film, and like the guy who did the sound design, it's only his second feature, Brendan, and I think him and Keela, what they were doing kind of came together as well during the edits, and when I listen to it now, it's just he did such a wonderful job. Like just like you can feel and hear, you can feel it through the sound. There's this kind of I was even listening to tonight when Patsy's down in the kitchen even, and there's these sounds coming through of like the belly of a beast, almost like you're inside something, and there's this sinister sound design that's going on all the way through. That's just it's a credit to the team we had. It really is. But we were lucky. We were lucky.
Yeah. Well,
we do it again, though. We'll do it again. Sorry, I'm talking too much to these people.
You're here to talk. So.
That was an incredible film. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And one of those direct tellings of the trauma of the family I've never seen for sure. You've spoken about a lot of elements in it, but one of the big ones, which you take for granted, but I think we should, is the language itself. That lends it all its authenticity. Can you tell us about a little bit more about that and why you chose to make it in Gaelic?
You couldn't make this film in any other language, I don't think. I mean, it's given where it is, I couldn't imagine it any other way. So it was always conceived in Irish. That was the beginning. The Irish kind of came first. But I think what I'm very proud of is that the language in a weird way is not as important it's not about the language. The language is part of the film, if you know what I mean. Particularly with Irish audiences, like to immerse yourself in this film, and it's something that people have come back time and time and said to me that, look, there's problems with the Irish language in Ireland, as in people who don't speak it have a hang up about it because of how it was taught and it was forced down people's throats, and there's all sorts of shit going on with the Irish language in Ireland. Everybody wants to speak it, everybody loves it, but there's a block. And I think a film like Arracht, because it's almost more like a foreign language film, Irish people have really rejoiced in watching it, because it's not like the language is a thing in the film. It's the language is the film in a way, and I think it allows people to enjoy the language almost in an more like osmosis, as opposed to this is an Irish language film. This just is a film that happens to be in Irish. And I think that comes from the authenticity of how it sounds, and that we stuck to our guns and used people from the same part of Connemara. It just sounds real. And even if you're from a different part of the world, I think you can sense that authenticity from it. You can tell that this is how those people spoke. It's almost like a documentary style in that way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say to you, it doesn't matter where they're from, no one's going to know. Johnny in Poland won't care if it's Donegal Irish or Connemara Irish, but I think that stuff really matters,
Yeah.
And I think that's why the film works. That's why the language in it just seems natural. And in a weird way, for me, when I'm watching it, I forget it's a film in Irish, and I only realise it is when they're in the landlord's house and I hear them all speaking English, and I suddenly go, and what was lovely about when we were shooting that scene was that suddenly they all sounded clunky when they were speaking, which I thought was lovely. The actors, the Irish, the Connemara actors, when they start speaking English, it was like they sound like they're speaking what they were saying. Just kind of didn't sound as flowy or as it was it was a really lovely moment. And when I watch the film and they switch to Irish, it always gets me. I always go, oh yeah, this is in Irish. I always forget, and I think that's because the guys are, it's the authenticity of how they speak.
Yeah, brilliant. Do you think we're seeing? Well, I think we are seeing more films made in the Irish language.
Yeah, there's a, but it's because of the support that's been given through the scheme that we made this film through, is one of the reasons. There's the support being given, and it's a really, really positive thing. And there's already been a few films attached to this scheme. There's some very strong films that are coming your way that aren't out yet, but there's going to be a slew of Irish language films, really strong content coming out of this scheme.
Sure.
Over the next couple of years.
So I think the scheme is definitely like the facilitating aspect of it. But films like Arracht has been very widely accepted by Irish audiences. I mean, it's done really well at the Irish box office. I hope you agree. But it's done well at the Irish box office. Dónall is the lead in a film called Fosca.
Yeah.
Shelter, which for 2 years in a row now he's in the lead film of the one that's been selected by Ireland for the Oscar Foreign Language category.
Yeah.
So he's probably going places like. But we saw that at Galway at the Film Fleadh earlier this year. Another wonderful film set in Connemara, shot in Connemara Gaelic. And the audience reception to it was very warm. It was incredible, and it felt like, to me, it feels like filmmaking as Gaeilge is taking more risks with its narrative form, because audiences are more used to seeing stories which travel outside of Connemara or of Gaeltacht.
Yeah, I have an opinion about. I would have an opinion about. There's this talk about films being more international, and you hear this kind of bandied about, and I basically think that's bullshit, because I think if you are authentic in what you do, you can tell a story that's set in a very small place that nobody have ever heard of. But if the performances are authentic, if the dialogue is authentic, if the emotions between the characters are authentic, that's an international film, because we're all the same all over the world. And I think if you're truthful to small stories, they're big stories. So I think the problem with a lot of filmmaking is that we try as a small country maybe to to be international, as in we try and be more American. You see these gangster TV shows from out of Ireland that are trying to be American gang. You know, it's just, for me, it's like, it's a yawn fest for me, you know, because I think when we and that's why the Irish language is such a cultural mine that hasn't been really, I think because what the language does is it forces filmmakers to look at us and look inward. And I think the authenticity of that is where the strong film work is coming from. It's like any great filmmakers, they begin telling stories about where they're from, like Scorsese with New York. And, you know, if you look at those films, they're small, but they're about small little places. They're not trying to be international. They're not trying to look over the field into, you know, what would these people like us to do. They're just telling their own stories, and that's international as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I feel quite strongly about that. And Arracht is proof of that. Because, you know, people that have watched this all over the world and they get something from it, you know.
Brilliant. Any more questions? Oh, there's one right at the back there, please.
Congratulations on the film. Also on casting Caro's greatest export, Siobhan O'Kelly. On the casting, did you have a cast in mind when you were writing it? I know you've worked with Dónall before, and also I have people in Birmingham where I'm from who are desperate to see this film. Is it going to get a UK release as well?
Well, the Irish distributor is here, and so is the producer, so you can chat to them afterwards. Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, Arracht seems to be in a great way. It seems to be, it's staying alive, you know, against all odds. I mean, it seems to be, you know, picking up its own kind of slow momentum. And I think, you know, what's wonderful about the film is that, you know, a lot of films just disappear and nobody ever sees them. And I really feel that Arracht is a film that will be seen. There's a lovely thing happening at the moment with schools in Ireland, that teachers are bringing their class, they're bringing, like, there's thousands of kids, you know, going out on a school tour to see Arracht, and these, like, really lovely, that for me is massive. Now, in terms of the casting, yeah, I didn't, well, obviously Dónall was the lead, and I just think I'm incredibly fortunate with Dónall and Dara Devani, because Dara Devani, who plays Patsy, I think is one of Ireland's greatest actors. I mean, just as a filmmaker, everything Dara does you can use, like every take. He's an incredible talent. And to have two guys who are so talented, like their performances are world class in this film. They're like, I don't care what anybody says, they are world class performances. And to have those two guys who are from 20 miles from one another, who were brought up speaking the Irish language and who happen to be the right age, happen to look fantastic, and are amazing, talented actors. You know, I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon. So I think I was very lucky. But yeah, the casting was great. We had Louise Kiley to help us. Louise, great casting director. So yeah, casting is key, as everybody knows.
Brilliant. We have a couple of questions down in front. I'll take this person first.
Hi, hello. Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought it was a fantastic film, very inspiring.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the writing process. It seems like you had a lot of freedom. How long did it take, and how much rewriting did you do? And also, was there consciously or even unconsciously you discovered after the fact films or filmmakers that had a big influence on you?
Yeah, so I mean, The Road was a big influence. I'll start with the end of your question first. Cormac McCarthy's The Road was a big influence on me, and There Will Be Blood, P.T. Anderson's film.
I work with John Hillcoat.
Oh well, that's amazing. So those were two films and filmmakers that I'm heavily influenced by. The writing process was quick, and it was my first feature, and it was a gun to the head kind of thing. So I just I wrote the vomit script, which is what we affectionately call the first draft, which is shit. And that was written pretty quick. and then we arrived at a pretty good draft, I think, in about 3 months.
Wow.
And I bounced off Kuhn a lot, the producer. Yeah, we lashed it out pretty fast, and then it goes into a process with Screen Ireland that they are with the Cine Cara thing. So they pick 5 from treatment, and then they give development money for the 5, and then they pick 2 who are greenlit with budgets of 1.2 million each, and that's the cap on the budget. That's all you get. Which means that things can go fast, because if the budget is any more, or if they open the door to any more money, or as in you go up, producers trying to go off and get more money, it just delays everything. And their thing is, we want to make 2 movies every year, and if we cap the budget at 1.2 million and nobody else can, that's what these films are. It speeds it up, it makes it faster. So it happened pretty quick, but then because so we were greenlit, but then I went off and got Mark O'Halloran involved, who wrote Adam and Paul and Rialto, and so Mark came on and was script editor for me, and he was great. He was actually really encouraging. I'm a massive fan of his, and as a writer and also first time feature writer, you were very insecure, you know, and I kind of didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know if I was doing it right. And then when we got near to the production stage, I'd say I drafted another about 10 times, and then we started to be told, like, you know, this is a €6 million film, you've got 1.2 million, so there's no horses, there's no people, there's no din, there's no ding, there's no dong. So it was like a 120-page script that ended up a 70-page script. So it just got, all the fat was taken off it, and it went right down to the bare. And then I had Dónall then living with me for a couple of weeks before we went to shoot. We went through the dialogue a lot with him, and his father's a folklore lecturer, so there was a lot of kind of talking about the script. And then when I was on set, things were happening all the time, and it was like, you know, that scene we're shooting tomorrow, we can't do that now, so you're going to have to incorporate that beat into the scene that you're doing with, or, you know, so it was a constant changing, flowing thing, which I found really fantastic, to be honest with you. The freedom of that I found wonderful, because I think as an actor, sometimes you get a chance to work with directors who are loose with dialogue, and they let you just do what you want. And for me, that was the happiest time of all for me on set, was because he would say, look, this dialogue is terrible. So, look, you know what you need to do. You guys need to have an argument about his wife. So can you just have an argument about his wife and just shoot that? And that for me was the freedom that I loved. So when I was on set shooting Arracht, I loved going home at night with Dónall and going, I got to rewrite this scene and we got to incorporate it in here. And I see stuff on the screen all the time that I go, oh yeah, that was because I couldn't do that. And now it ended up being that. And so yeah, it was, that's this, and it seems to be how I like to work. And thankfully I've written another screenplay since then, and it seems like it's something I seem to be able to do. So I'm kind of relieved at that. But you're always, as a writer, you always think you can't do it. I mean, that's constant, like constant. It's really weird. And so I suppose that's why it's such a buzz, that when you do get through that barrier and realize, okay, it's okay, you know, you're actually not really terrible at this. I mean, that's kind of the writers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. We had another question before.
Míle mágad an sór job rinne si go leir. I wanted to ask about a lot of the sound design that you talked about, and the imagery of, you know, few animals gone on, you know, the sudden acts of violence. There's a real kind of horror thread going through this. I mean, do you see Arracht as a horror film, and is that what you set out to make?
That's a good question.
I do. Yeah, I mean, I do. I think there's a gothic element to the film. I mean, even with Kate, the DOP, we tried to, even when we were shooting the landscape, the time of year was very important, like October, because what happens in Connemara is the colour gets kind of pulled out of landscape around that time of year, and it becomes kind of red and browns, and so I mean we wanted to use as much as we could in terms of landscape and image and framing to kind of create a cold and kind of a fearful and also with the soundscape. I was always pushing towards horror because I mean I think horror is the best place really to describe what happened to Ireland. It's how I think we all I suppose it's I think the famine is in all of us, and I think it was a horrific time. And it's a horrific memory, even a third, fourth generational memory for us. So I think horror it probably happened almost. It was just seemed the natural way to tell the story. But I didn't look at horror tropes either. But weirdly enough, I was listening to an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson, who made There Will Be Blood, and I only listened to this last week, and they made the same comparison with his film, that There Will Be Blood is like a horror film, and it has the same kind of darkness, and so maybe I magpied the horror from There Will Be Blood a little bit. I don't know, but yeah, I see what you mean. The word Arracht was a word. I've said this before. Sometimes as a writer I will pick something because I like it and it has no meaning, and then the meaning will come after that. And Arracht is a perfect example of that. I love the word Arracht, and I used to hear it when I was a kid in school. And it was a word that not many people knew. And even in Connemara, I would say Arracht, like my missus from Connemara, and she didn't know what it meant. Like at the beginning, she was like, I've never heard that word. And she speaks, she's brought up speaking Irish. So it's a word that I've always loved. I love the look of it, and that's where. So, but the word monster, I think it translates as monster. Rough translation is monster, but I always think there's many monsters in the film. From Coleman's arrogance at the beginning of the film, and his assumption that he can save everybody by going up to the landlord, to obviously the monster that comes across the land and destroys people's livelihoods, and then the British involvement in the starvation of millions of people. Not the British, but the British aristocracy at the time and their foreign policy. The monstrous apathy of the landlords to the suffering. So there's many monsters in the film. So it actually it's a really good fit, and the horror thing is a really good observation. Yeah.
That's really interesting to hear about the etymology of the word monster. Like there's so much in that. Do we have time for another question? I'm going to take that as a yes. One more. We've got one right down the front. Just to make sure.
I'll be quick. Everybody's lagging it up. Oh, here we're going. This fella never shuts up. I missed the last bus home. Do you have last buses home?
Hi. So you mentioned at the beginning that you started with the idea of Man in the Boat vanished from Ireland, and that's kind of where you started. So I'm just interested to know how the character of Patsy came about and how he kind of evolved through the process. Because I don't know.
Yeah, so I am very interested in grey area when it comes to bad guys. So what I try to do with the landlord is create an English, because in these films and stories, a lot of the time what you end up is moustache twirling British, evil people. So what I wanted to do with my fascination with him is, I wanted to show him as a person first, because I think we're all the same, and given the right circumstances, we can all be monstrous and apathetic about other people's suffering. I mean, we're all doing it right now in the world. So I don't think there are any bad guys. I think we become bad people because of certain situations we're put in. So I'm fascinated by that as a storyteller. So with the Patsy character, I like the fact that the evilest person in the film is actually an Irish person. Also the two guys who come up to get the money from them, they're both Irish. And some of the perpetrators of the worst horrors during the famine were Irish people, and they did it to their own. So I'm really interested in that grey area when it comes to storytelling, because I think the black and white bad guy good guy thing is boring. So Patsy is Patsy's one of those guys. There are freedom fighters and there's people who fight for causes, and then there are just people who are damaged, and they will use any cause they can to perpetrate violence or to try and usurp or to put themselves in a position of power. Patsy is one of those people. Patsy's a bad dog. Like, bad things were done to him when he was small, and he's the kind of dog that hangs around the yard and then suddenly he will just bite somebody. So he's bad. He's damaged, and whatever situation you're going to put Patsy in, he will end up trying to empower himself through violence, and he does it up in the landlord's house, because he's shamed by Coleman when Coleman takes the gun off him and tells him and embarrasses him in front of these people. The guy he looks up to now is suddenly his enemy. He kills his brother. He also kills the landlord, and then he goes hunting with the English, working with the English, and he fought for the British Army as well. So he's one of these characters that just, some people struggle with Patsy's motivation. I remember when we did test screenings, one of the big things was Patsy's motivation was an issue for people. They were like, what's motivating this guy, And my answer to that is, whatever you've got, you know what I mean? When it comes to, what are you rebelling against? Whatever you've got, that's Patsy. He's just one of those people. So that's the answer to that question. And I think we should let everybody go.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.